Hello. Hi, Kitty. Hello, good evening. Hi, Chumki. Okay, it's exactly 6 now. So let's start. Good evening. Namaskar. This is Asha Kuthari Chaudhuri, and I teach in the Department of English at Gauhati University, and I've specialized and taught theatre and drama studies all my life. Right in the beginning, I would like to express my thanks and my gratitude to Coconut Theatre for hosting this wonderful event. And I've been having such a wonderful time every 6 o'clock and 5 o'clock on weekends, listening to people from the theatre about their hands-on experiences. There's never actually been a boring moment. So that might just change today, because I don't think you've actually had a theatre academic talking about the theatre of the Northeast. That's what I've chosen to do today. But I'm an academic. I'm not a theatre practitioner. I study theatre. I teach theatre. I also do critical analyses on performances. So yes, I'm a bit of a dramaturge, but then it has been for me too. मेरे लिए भी life has been all about the theatre. I started working with the theatre when I was about 20. 20 साल की उम्र में I had gotten on to the stage, and the stage really changed my life because it never left me. I never went on to become an actor or a director. I have been writing, of course, but I went on a different tangent. I went on and taught drama to students. So I think by now I've taught for 24 years, which means that I have 24 into 66 students who know my passion for the theatre, and hopefully some of it has rubbed off on them as well. So I teach in Assam. और मेरा टॉपिक आज जो है, और मैं अंग्रेज़ी में बोलूँगी ज़्यादातर क्योंकि आई एम मोर कंफर्टेबल इन दैट लैंग्वेज, बीच बीच में हिंदी डालूँगी इधर उधर. अब नॉर्थ ईस्ट से हूँ मैं. नॉर्थ ईस्ट का टॉपिक भी मैंने चुना है आज, थिएटर ऑफ द नॉर्थ ईस्ट. और नॉर्थ ईस्ट जब हम मेंशन करते हैं, what happens really? For most people all across our country, what is the idea of the Northeast? The remotest part of our country, full of jungles. Sometimes people even think that there are headhunters and cannibals here. So, okay, jungle is a good thing. We do have a great amount of greenery. We probably live in one of the more beautiful parts of our country. But then when you're thinking of theatre, we are also living in a place, in a country, in a state where theatre actually begins centuries ago, sometime in the 14th century. And I'll be actually recounting what exactly happens when we are talking about theatre in the Northeast. But before we actually go into that, and I hope I will be able to keep you engaged for one whole hour, which is what I'm planning to do. And I hope you don't get bored, and I hope this doesn't sound too much like a class that I do. Nevertheless, I think it is important, very important, to understand where we speak from. Who are the people from the Northeast? Yeah, we know we have 7 states. Yes, Assam and Gauhati is probably what most people are more familiar with. But then there are wonderful states, most beautiful states like Meghalaya, Mizoram, Nagaland, Tripura, Manipur, and also you have Sikkim and Arunachal. Some of the most beautiful places you'll ever visit, if you visit, is here in the Northeast. But what about theatre? So let's begin with where I stay, in Assam. And we talk about theatre here in Assam. It begins sometime in 1468. That is usually the date that we have on record by the biographers of Srimanta Shankardev, the great Vaishnavite saint, the first play or opera, actually, a one-act opera that he wrote, which is referred to as the Sinha Jatra. Now, the Sinha Jatra is something that is, it's a creation, it's a literary creation, as well as it's something that occupies absolutely pride of place in the annals of world theatre, because it's one of the earliest. For maybe the next 100 years, you didn't have the proper English theatre in place. So we because we are teaching in the Department of English, it's very interesting for us to note that Chaucer is the contemporary of Srimanta Shankardev, the great Vaishnavite saint, and Shankardev lived for a solid 100 years, which means that he had in this big life a very, very huge contribution to make to the cultural life of Assam. So when he wrote the Sinha Jatra, this is an interesting format. He writes the plays, he makes the songs which he's going to use, he formulates the space, and the bhuyas are the people who will create the stage on which the Sinha Jatra will be enacted. और उसके बाद आप म्यूजिक जो डालते हैं वो भी सारा शंकरदेव ने खुद ही किया. जो पेंटेड सीनरी बनाई गई, और दिस इज अगेन वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग, दिस इज द 14th century. You probably don't have painted scenery very well even in Europe, but here you have painted scenery that is happening in the stage of Shankardeva. So this is the first recorded performance. Unfortunately, इसकी text जो है वो अभी हमारे पास उपलब्ध नहीं है, परंतु हम इसके बारे में जानते हैं क्योंकि it is available in the various biographies and records of the saint and his followers and his disciples like Madhav Dev and the others. From the Sinha Jatra, you have a build-up of a whole series of Onkiya Nat or Bhavnas, as they are called in Assam. And the Onkiya Nat, for example, there are 5 very good, interesting examples of the Onkiya Nat. They are Kaliya Daman, they are, then you have Rukmini Haran, Ram Vijay, Patni Prasad and Keli Gopala. These are 5 very good examples of the Onkiya Nat or Bhavna. Till today, these bhavnas are performed in the Namghars or the places of prayer for the Vaishnavas in Assam. And this is also now performed by the lay people. Earlier, it would be performed by the monks in the hotras. The hotra is again a monastery. These are all wonderful, culturally rich places that are actually the receptacles of the very, very wonderful philosophies and cultural ideas that Assam is so full of. Which includes not just music and dance, it also includes weaving and singing and mask making, for example. The other very interesting thing about the Onkiya Nat and even of the Sinha Jatra is that, it speaks of 7 paradises, the 7 Vaikunths, the Sat Vaikunt. और इसमें 7 Vishnu, who are all played by male priests or monks, and you have also 6 Lakshmis in this, again played by boys. It's very interesting again to note that in Onkiya Nat, in Onkiya Bhavna, and in the entire Hotriya tradition, at least in the beginnings, you do not have any place that is accorded to the female actor, which is not really true for the other parts of our country, particularly if you think about the Natya Shastra. Natya Shastra, and you think about also, beyond Natya Shastra, if you're thinking about people, for example, like Urvashi, the Apsaras, who were all the greatest performers ever. So mythically too, they are actually there. They have a space. But this again is denied to the females, at least in the Onkiya Nats that the Vaishnav saint of Assam formulated. So this is where it all begins. 14th century, Onkiya Nat, Bhavna, mythologies of Ram and Vishnu. basically these two. They're very interestingly related and linked to the other old traditions of our country, like the Ram Leela or the Ras Leela in various parts of the country, and also the various types of performances that are linked to Leelas such as these in Tamil Nadu and in Kerala as well. So this is the basic idea from where, in terms of what we can think about the theatre here in Assam. Bhavna ke baad, we have 3 or 4 different varieties of performances that come out of the Bhavna, the Ankyanat, Dhora or Fojia, and Palla, and the Jatra. So these are 4-5 different variants that would be used. And remember, these are all religious plays. These are not secular ideas yet. The same thing we will find when we go to Mizoram. We will find that, okay, most of the theatre there is also all ecclesiastical, apart from the things that were there pre-Christianity. So we are going to Mizoram in a little bit. But back in Assam, if we come now to, and I'm going to make a rather big jump, because of course it's not going to be really possible to cover everything in this little time that I'm going to share with you. In the 19th century, you have modern, colonial, and then the post-colonial stuff. So the 19th century onwards, what happens? बंगाल में हमें पता है कि एक रेनेसांस के जैसे हो रही थी. The nationalism and the spirit of nationalism, the freedom movement, everything had already started. Everything was bubbling at this time. And what was happening in Assam? You have some very important things happening in the theatre as well in Assam. And you have Padmanath Gohai Borua. You have him writing historical and mythological plays. You have Lakshminath Bezbora writing a play like, say, Joymati. Padmanath Gohai Borua also writes a play on Joymati. And then you have Jyoti Prasad Agarwala, who makes a film on these, based on these two plays. But before them all, actually, the first modern, perhaps, Assamese play that you have, that we all have noted is Gunabiram Borua's Ram Navami. See, we are talking here now about texts. There's a very interesting split that you will find when we are thinking about the theatre. The stage and the page will all the time sort of be there together, but at the same time they are different things almost at certain times. So here we are looking at Gunabiram Borua's Ram Navami. Very interesting it is to note that Ram Navami is actually a tithi in Rajasthan, isn't it? How does that actually come now and becomes a name of a character? So you have here a very interesting collision almost of ideas that are seeping in from the outside of Assam into Assam and shaping its dramatic output. So you now already have writers who are writing, and these are the 4 important names that I would like you all to remember. And please remember, the people who are watching from Assam, these are things that are absolutely commonplace for you. This is not really meant for the audience in Assam as such, but this is meant for people who have little or no idea about Assamese theatre or theatre from the Northeast. Apart from big names, I'm sure everybody knows about Ratan Thiam or Haisnam Kanhailal. So yes, these are commonplace examples, but we are coming to them in a bit. So from the 19th century, if we move now to Assamese theatre and performance, contemporary Assamese theatre and performance, what do we see? This is very, very interesting because we know that by the coming of independence after 1947, you already have, very interestingly, the formation of National School of Drama. And the National School of Drama began with the premise that you have to get hold of all the theatres from all over the country and create a certain kind of renaissance in terms of reclaiming all that was there in these rich receptacles which are our states, in the vernacular languages, in the folk idioms, and so on. So, abhi dekhte hain kya hota hai. हम NSD बन चुकी है. असम से पहले NSD ग्रेजुएट हैं देव कुमार नाथ. He is the first Assamese graduate who comes out from the NSD, trained as an actor. But he unfortunately doesn't do much. He moves away from the theatre altogether. That is a very rare phenomenon, by the way. Not too many people leave the theatre, but Dev Kumar Nath actually did, despite having passed out from the NSD. The second graduate actually is Dulal Kumar Roy. Now, we talked about texts in the beginning. Okay, so you do have a certain kind of text even with the Ankiya Nat in the Ankiya Bhavna. Now, you also have texts that are there in the 19th century with all these 4-5 authors that I mentioned. There are more, but I'm just sticking with these 4 or 5. Now you have the age of directors. I'm not saying that the writing was not happening. There is a great writer like Arun Sharma who's writing. I'm going to talk about him in a bit. But when you're thinking now about the second NSD graduate, who is Shri Dulal Roy. Dulal Roy साहब ने जब ग्रेजुएट किया, वो जब असम वापस आए, उन्होंने सतीश भट्ट के साथ कोलैबोरेट किया. Satish Bhattacharya was incidentally, he was a teacher of mine when I was studying in Handy Girls College at Gauhati. And they actually began to translate a whole lot of world classics into Assamese. And Dulal Roy became one of the very important directors who produced, directed a whole lot of plays that were initially world classics into Assamese translations. So after having done that, when he came in, he joined the Cultural Affairs Directorate and came in touch with that big personality of Sri Rudra Borua, and he was pushed to do original Assamese plays, which he did do. The other very important name that we must not forget ever is that of Sri Kulada Bhattacharji, actually, I beg your pardon. Now, Kulada Bhattacharji, or Benuda as we all know him, is one of our most very well-loved actors. He's past 80, but he's still acting in films and plays till today. So I've had the good fortune of actually being directed by him. When I did a little, I was a sutradhar in one of his productions. So having said that, Kulada Bhattacharji, again, is someone who gets his basic training here in Assam, and then he moves off to London and trains there. Very interestingly, his student counterpart, his classmate almost, is someone that we know as one of the greats of world theatre, Wole Soyinka from Nigeria. So they apparently studied together. Having trained there, he comes back and starts producing, directing plays in Assamese. Again, doing classics at times, doing original theatre at times, doing even mobile theatre at times. So now when we're thinking about mobile theatre, and this is something that we cannot forget, it's a huge phenomenon that is extant. It works in Gauhati, in Assam, the way it does not work anywhere else. But I'm going to come to that in a bit. Now we have plays that are being written and directed, Assamese plays. So now you also have the work of, in terms of writers, who are the great writers? Of course, you have the one big name that you will remember, which you cannot forget, is, of course, that of Sri Arun Sharma. He has 20 full-length plays and quite a few other radio plays and shorter plays for children. Now, the kind of corpus that he has, I am very surprised that he's not yet been translated and performed elsewhere in the country, because the quality of his plays, the writing is so powerful, the language is so lyrical. This is something that needs to be shared, and currently and thankfully we are now running a project taking on the work of Arun Sharma and trying to collate everything and put out a collected, translated plays of Arun Sharma. And we do hope that it is going to reach other parts of the country, and they're plays that will adapt easily to any other context, to the Marathi, to the Gujarati, to Tamil, because it's a modern world that he is looking at. He's not actually doing what Girish Karnad would be doing in terms of history and folklore. He is actually taking up the here and the now and modern existential realities. And it's so very relevant. It can be easily adapted to any other language. The other very relevant writers are Mohendra Bhatt Thakur, and who mostly wrote for the mobile theatre. You also have Munien Borua, who was writing a little bit fair amount for mobile theatre too. You have Hemendra Thakur, who he called himself Thakur for the stage. And you have these people writing. But I think the work of Arun Sharma, he began writing sometime in the 60s and 70s. He is still being produced in a kind of dimension that not many other playwrights would find themselves being produced. He's being produced all over Assam. In terms of numbers, there are a lot more than any other playwright might hope for. So yes, so these are the writers that you have, 1960s, 70s, 80s. Who are the actors who have also now gone to the NSD, come back to Assam, started doing theatre here? The big names, of course, are those of Pranjal and Purnima Saikia. These are again people who are now looking after the NSD here in Assam. The way the plays are coming, the way they're being performed, the way they're being shared with the public. We have a great deal to thank Pranjalda and Purnima Bo for. So the other very important NSDN and theatre activist, really, someone who's been able to do Hindi theatre in Assam. Say, for example, a Hindi version of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf by Edward Albee. You have Baharul Islam and Bhagirathi, his wife, and they are absolutely wonderful performers with their theatre group called the Seagull Theatre Group. Baharullah, of course, is someone who is widely traveled. He takes his plays everywhere. He works in films. I think currently he's also worked fairly in Mumbai as well. So yes, these are people that have done a great deal for theatre in Assam, particularly in the fact that they have this theatre space where they very often, for many summers, they have done theatre workshops for children. And apart from the very many productions that they have done and represented Assam in the Rang Mahotsav at the NSD festival at various junctures. So these are very important names. The other names that come to mind are Pakiza Begum and Anup Hazarika, who worked with Ba Theatre. You have Nayan Prasad, who's done a great deal of radio work, and of course he worked for All India Radio. The other very big name that you will remember is now Adil Hussain, again, someone who's studied and taught at the National School of Drama, and he absolutely needs no introduction. So therefore, I don't think I am really competent to talk about his work, and most of us are so familiar with the excellent work that he's been doing. But then I would like to say that we really miss him at the theatre, because he's now sort of made the crossover into films, and we do hope that Adil will be able to come back to the theatre in a big way sometime in the future. The other, again, very well-known name, who comes from Assam, who comes from the district of Nalbari in Assam, is Seema Biswas. Again, someone who needs no introduction after having played that wonderful, terribly difficult role in Bandit Queen of Shekhar Kapoor. So these are the big names that you find that have, in some sense, shaped the theatre trajectory of Assam. But there were the other two new young people. They're not so new. They've started works right on from 2008 onwards. They've done a great number of films as well. And they are, of course, Zarifa Wahid with her Zarifa Wahid Productions, and Kopil Bora with Kopil Bora and Company. That was formed just about a year or two back. These are two young people who've done excellent work in the sense that they have been able to produce full-length mounted proscenium plays. Many of them have been adaptations of Girish Karnad. Many of them have been written by Arun Sharma. And some of them have been extremely difficult plays to mount, but they have done it. Say there is also a play like Moromor Bondhu that is adapted from a Western playwright with which they have traveled to Mumbai. Now that is a very interesting question, you see. We keep talking about theatres of bhasha literatures, of theatres of the grassroots, of theatres of the roots of different languages as they are, but how much do they really travel? You know, when we are actually producing mounting, say, a theatre festival, what we really want to do, is go and get some of the Marathi language or Gujarati language theatre, and who will come and perform, say, in Assam. Say, if you're having a theatre festival in Gujarat, you might have an Assamese language theatre production there. Now it happens. It's not that it doesn't happen. It happens, but it's extremely rare. Now that, of course, because of the big bane of all theatre in all over the world, actually, money. It's very difficult to raise funding for these plays to travel. That having said that, I would like to say, bring up the name of one very important playwright, director, and theatre maker. A person who is now no more with us, someone who has absolutely left one big gulf in what was looking like a huge, placing Assam on the map of world theatre, because there were lots and lots of interest that is being generated in this particular theatre phenomenon. And this was, of course, Shukracharya Rabha, who went, rather than going to the cities, he went back to his village. He actually went back to his roots, went to Badung Duppa Kala Kendra, set it up. He, of course, had also the blessings of Haisnam Kanhailal, who was his master from Manipur. I'm going to come to him when I speak about Manipur. I hope I have the time. I'm trying to jam-pack the whole thing with so many names and so many people and so many great performance artists and ideas that have come from the Northeast, just so that some of you become familiar with and become curious about what theatre of the Northeast is all about. So Shukracharya Rabha, you see, his place is right in the middle of a jungle. The Sal forests of Assam. It's a place called Agya. The village is called Rampur. You go there you hire a car and go there. It's about 3 hours from Gauhati. When you reach there, you get off from the car and you hear your own breath. And that is not something that you do all the time. You are not really aware of your own breathing. And when you're doing that, what happens? You suddenly feel so self-aware. And then you walk through the sal trees, you go through the sal trees, and what happens? You suddenly come across this little opening, a proscenium theatre made out of mud, trees that form a canopy over your head, huge, long, very tall trees. And you have almost 2,000 people sitting on bamboo benches all around the trees. Remember, no trees are cut off here. All the trees are intact, standing there. So if you have to see a play that is going on, and the plays are going on, I saw Macbeth, I saw several other productions, what you have to do is you have to sort of put your head around the tree, wrap yourself around the tree and watch the plays. And he would have this wonderful Under the Sal Tree Theatre Festival every year. And they, even after his passing, for 2 continuous years, Madan Rabha and his, Shukracharya's friends and disciples are continuously trying to raise money to continue this wonderful theatre festival that is probably unique in the history of theatre across the world. And, you have the whole village flocking in to come to see a play performed by a group from Brazil, say, for example, or someone from South Korea. And then you also have the local plays that Shukracharya himself wrote and directed and produced. So yes, wonderful intermixture. So many groups from across India also have come and performed there. Some of them have initially felt extremely unhappy. यहाँ पे माइक नहीं मिलता है, कैसे बिना माइक के कैसे हम करेंगे, लेपल माइक्स तो लगाने दीजिए, नहीं. So there's an absolutely no on any electric lights, on any electric equipment. What you see is what you get. You have a mud-baked proscenium theatre. You have an arch, a proscenium arch that is actually made by bamboo, stitching together bamboo leaves and trees and so on. And you have everything as it would be in nature. And the queer and strange thing about this is that after they are done, and I saw this wonderful Sanskrit play there, they were extremely unhappy that they were not able to use microphones. And then when they started saying their dialogues, you see, it was very, very interesting. They were so surprised in rehearsal. हर एक शब्द अच्छे से सुनाई पड़ रहा था. Wonderful acoustics, again brought about by just the trees and the canopy of the trees around you. So you could hear yourself speak. You could hear whispers right at the back. So this is a kind of theatre that is really unique, and I really invite all of you. I hope a lot of you will be interested in this wonderful place called Badungdupa Kala Kendra in Assam, and maybe we'll make some kind of plan to come and visit sometime in December, if we happen to open it this year, if at all. But that is another story. So, having said all these things about theatre in Assam, let me quickly wrap up a little bit about Mizoram and Meghalaya and Nagaland. Not too much is available here. Not too much, because I, as a theatre scholar, have often considered, when I travel to Mizoram or Manipur on academic assignments very often, and every time I go, I am trying to find out if there is any original theatre matter or material available there. नहीं मिलता है ज़्यादा. मिज़ोरम गई, नागालैंड गई, नेहू में गई, मेघालय, हर जगह थिएटर अब शुरू होने लगा है. It wasn't really there, and I think the reason is very interesting. The reason is, for example, in Mizoram, theatre होता है, but only evangelical, religious theatre, even today. It is only now that you have some very interesting female dramatists who have started writing. I am going to have to look at my piece of paper to give you their names. There are some very interesting work now being done, but history में एक rupture सी आ गई because of the coming of the missionaries. Because I think there is a certain kind of rupture that happens, which is the same thing that happens in Meghalaya, in Mizoram, and in Nagaland. Because of the coming of the Christians, folk theatre that is there, it's still there in the Garo Hills. Folk Garo theatre still exists. They still do a lot of performances. So while songs and dances didn't go away, theatre in terms of natak did not really happen, unless it was just it was a nativity or a biblical story that they were performing. Abhi Mizoram mein there are 2 or 3 very important writers. Lal Muaka, who's the first woman playwright who's called Khalkungi, and then there is Lal Hangfala Sailo. You have Lal Tluang Liana Kiangte and Lian Sailova. And the first musodrama was actually printed as late as 1962. And after that, quite a bit of writing is happening in Mizoram. I just hope a lot of performance also starts to happen there. Similar is the case with Meghalaya, although you do have one very important person, Nicholas Kharkongar, who is now also making movies like Ohoni and Mantra, I think he made. But then he was not a filmmaker before. He was actually a theatre person. He was a person who was writing plays like, he didn't know he was a genius. And that was a play about Van Gogh, which I happened to see long ago in India Habitat Center at Delhi. So yes, he was writing another gay play again. So wonderful stuff that he was also writing. But then, unfortunately, I don't think he's writing too many plays now. He's making movies. So cinema's gain is almost always the loss of the theatre. That's true everywhere. That's true here as well. So अब हम आते हैं मणिपुर में. मणिपुर बोलने से दो नाम जोर एकदम जल्दी से उभर के आते हैं, रतन ठियाम और हेसनाम कन्हैयालाल. इन दोनों के अलावा भी बहुत सारा काम हो रहा है और इनका ट्रेडिशन अनब्रोकन है. शुमंग लीला के साथ लेकर अब तक वो ट्रेडिशन टूट नहीं गया है. So there's a whole lot of modern theatre that is happening, but there's also the older mode of theatre which existed in Manipur, and it continues till today. So that is an unbroken, very interesting, non-ruptured space that we are looking at. अभी देखिए यहाँ पे मैंने 8 ग्रुप्स का नाम लिखा हुआ है और इनका नाम हमें जानने की आवश्यकता है, क्योंकि हम सब बॉम्बे थिएटर वालों को जानते हैं, किंतु यहाँ के ग्रुप्स को नहीं जानते. So perhaps it's required that we do know these names. Manipur Dramatic Union from Imphal. You have the Roop Mahal Theatre from Imphal again. You have the Aryan Theatre from Imphal. Of course, the big name is Ratan Thiam's group, Chorus Repertory Theatre, and the Kalakshetra Manipur from which was started by Hesnam Kanhailal. You also have Forum of Laboratory Theatres of Manipur, Imphal, which is started by Lokendra Arabam, and you have a whole lot of open air theatres that will happen all the time in Manipur, called Shumang Leela. If we are looking at the work that has taken place, and now we are thinking again in terms of writing as well as production. These are interesting fissures, half the time. Just for example, Hesnam Kanhailal wrote a play called Pebet. Pebet का आप टेक्स्ट देखने जाएंगे तो टेक्स्ट प्राय है ही नहीं, but it's a solid 1.5 hour play. So it's about physical theatre more than anything else, in terms of this wonderful virtuosity with which the actors perform, the way they learn their voice and body techniques, the way their breathing training happens. This is something that is unique to particularly these two groups in Manipur, Chorus Repertory and Hesnam Kanhailal's group, Kalakshetra Manipur. Let us look at some of the important plays that need to be known by everybody in this country, at least. Kanhailal's Tamna Lai, or The Haunting Spirit, ये 1972 की play है. Kabui Kayuba, which is half man, half tiger, which is again 1973. Pebet, which is about a mother bird and her chicklings, 1975. You have a Laigi Machasinga, or The Children of God, 1978. Memoirs of Africa, 1986. Migi Sharang, or The Human Cage, 1991. You have Karna in 1997 and Draupadi in 2000. And you have, of course, the production of Daghar, Tagore's Daghar, in 2006. And the last play that I have in my list is Yu Uchek Lang Maidong, or The Bird, which came in 2008. With the work of Ratan Thiam, of course, we are all very familiar with his work. Plays like Chakravyu, for example, plays like Urubhangam, plays like Nine Hills, and so on. So you have a whole bunch of plays that people like Ratan Thiam and Hisnam Kanhailal, right, have and performed. But if you're looking for a text to perform and adapt into a different language, then I think the better bet would be Ratan Thiam, because he has a lot of text. But then if you're trying to replicate what he's doing in Manipuri, I don't think it's possible, because his is an absolutely unique style. So is something like Pebit. Again, I had the good fortune of watching Pebit in Badungdokpa, Kalakendra Shukracharya's place, and I think I might have seen the last performance ever. Probably Sabitri is not going to be doing anymore. She's finding age to be not really on her side. But what a performance. And you have just about 7 to 8 dialogues. So there you are. You have this wonderful performers breathing and making you breathe with them. And that is a kind of virtuosity that is not very commonly found. That is not really, I don't know how, I know that the NSD has a very, very rigorous training program. But it's also it's an interesting fact that someone like Hisnam Kanayalal actually left the NSD and started his own training in his own setup called the Kalakshetra Manipur. And there is something to be said then for the kind of grinding training that they put their actors through. Without that, you cannot really do anything. So there you have now with Ratan Thiam, and you have all these people. When I was thinking about theatre in the Northeast, and I was thinking again, yes, of course, about how does a person sitting here take their play, carry their play to Mumbai, perform for a mixed audience? Or is the lot of vernacular theatre just to be straitjacketed and pushed into their own little spaces? Is the answer something like what is evolved by someone like Ratan Thiam? Because he has traveled, his plays have traveled all over the place, they travel all over the world and the country, and once you sit down and you start listening, almost inhaling a performance of, say, his Macbeth, you begin to forget that this is a language that you don't understand. Because of course you understand everything. If you are watching something that a doyen like Ratan Thiam is performing or putting before your eyes, the way he's bringing in all sorts of elements from the No theatre, the way, if you are familiar with the work of Akira Kurosawa, you are familiar with what is going on with the costuming. You are also familiar then with the raging of Lady Macbeth that he, and again, crazy paraphernalia. Look at the way he uses the props, the letter, for example, the letter that Macbeth sends to Lady Macbeth, telling her about his ambitions. The letter in Thiam's stage is almost, 10 meters long? 10 by 1 meter long letter written with the Meitei script. So it's also very interesting again to note that when we are talking about the script, in Manipur, it is only recently that the Meitei script has come back now and has been established once again. It was lost after colonization happened, after the Northeast came under the British, and thereby into the Bengal residency. The Manipuris had to write a great deal, their script, the written script was Bengali for a very, very long time. It is only now that they are throwing that off and reclaiming their own Meitei language. Okay, so I think I've given you a very hurried, very, very quick sort of capsule of what goes on here. You also might be curious about what happens, say, in a state like Arunachal Pradesh. With Arunachal Pradesh, we have hundreds of tribes there, and a great deal of, you have, a certain kind of Buddhism working there, most of the places. But you also have tribal religions. With this particular thing, I think one has to note that there is this, I keep talking about the rupture that happens, and the rupture has happened because when you travel to places like Arunachal, Mizoram, Nagaland, you don't really find the old theatrical material, which I'm sure existed, the pre-Christian material. It's not there anymore. But I do hope the people there will themselves try and reclaim some of that themselves. Okay, I would like to take questions now. I'm seeing there are a lot of questions. Let me just scroll down. So, hello Zarifa. Zarifa is saying, that is the Zarifa I talked about. And welcome Zarifa. Would you kindly throw a bit of light on the difficulties of staging plays or repeating productions due to the lack of sufficient number of auditoriums? Yes, I am glad you pointed that out. This is a huge constraint. It's a huge constraint in terms of, okay, you might have, when you're doing a theatre festival too, it's the same problem. You have one big auditorium, another one is in repair, and then end of story. How do you do plays without auditoria? So either the government steps in, or some private enterprise steps in, or some trust comes in, someone who loves the theatre, someone who has the money, who can sponsor the arts. Okay, until that happens, until that happens, this is always going to be a problem. When you travel to places like Mumbai and you see a small black box like Prithvi, or you go to Rangashankara or Jagriti in Bangalore, these are places that are really doable. I was speaking to Arundhati Akka, and she was saying that, this place is built on just 100 by 100, square meters, and that's how it is. Rangashankara is not a huge place, it's a small theatre. But that is exactly what we need, and we really need to work out. The government really needs to also step in and pitch in to have these auditoriums. This is a huge, huge problem. You can't, if you have Robindra Bhavan, the one big place that is affordable for most theatre groups, if it goes on into renovation, then it's end of story for all the people who would like to have productions. Simultaneous productions sometimes not happening because there's simply not enough auditoria. Yeah, so thank you. Okay. Finance, I have already talked about. That is something that is really a problem everywhere in the world. So, yes. Let us see. Bengali theatre influenced Northeast theatre. That is not something a Northeasterner would really agree with. Although Tagore, I told you, his name, Kanhailal actually, and many other theatre groups in Assam have worked with a great deal with Tagore's works. So yes, Tagore. Great work does not really know borders, I think. So like we worked with Tagore, I'm suggesting why does not the rest of India work with someone like Jyoti Prasad and his plays? They're master plays. They work with interesting ideas of class, race, gender, hierarchies, completely, what we talk about all the time nowadays, but then it's just here. Why don't you take our plays and do them outside of Assam? Yeah. Pallav, thank you for your comment. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mahesh. Thank you. I hope you all get a little bit interested. I hope I have made you a little curious about what happens here in the Northeast. And it's also very interesting, you see, that we do such a lot of theatre. You know, अभी तो बंद है हम सब कुछ, जैसे सब जगह है. पर जब बंद नहीं होता है तो कभी कभी इतने नाटक होते हैं साथ साथ में कि हम एक देखें एक छूट जाती है. इट्स लाइक दैट. इट ऑलवेज it's chock block full. There's so many new people working, and they should also be traveling more. That is something that really irks me. They should be going and performing outside so that people outside can check out the work. Okay, thank you, Moyuri Bharali Mimli. This is something that, yes, that was a big hole in my big list of things that I was giving you. Bhupen Saikia's plays, of course. He, again, another person who's almost at par with the, in terms of production, at par with the work of Arun Sharma. A lot of work that has been written, Endur, a whole lot of plays. But then, he's also remembered for films because he's also a filmmaker. So that sort of puts him, he's got one leg in both boats. So, yes. But Bhupen Saikia is again another very, very important playwright, short story writer, novelist and filmmaker who is going to be there in the theatre or any theatre history of Assam. Thank you. Vijay Shukla is asking me how to find a good script or any source to reach good script. Ask me. I can help out because I am in touch with a lot of people, and otherwise, आप लिखेंगे तो I can put you in touch with most people. Any good script that might come from here. But also I think the one space that requires real help right now is Badungdopa, the theatre festival that happens under the sal trees in the forests of Agya in Rampur. So, yes. Okay. Thank you all for all these questions and pointers. There is someone called Fiel Gak. Can you send a coconut movie? I am not really able to follow what that means. Hello Preeta ji, how are you? I hope you're still there. Hi Gayatri. I don't know. Abhi kitna baja hai? I have absolutely no idea what the time is. 6:53. So I think I've taken my share of time, and I still have time if you want me to say some things. That's okay, Vijay. You can ask me. Thank you, Namrata, for coming. Thank you so much. Yes, if there is a little bit more time, let me say something about mobile theatre. I was going to say it just slipped out of my mind. Assam is also home to this huge phenomenon of the mobile theatre. 1963, the Kohinoor Theatre was born with Achut Lohkar. And at this point of time, there are tens and 20, I don't know the exact number, but many, many groups on the ground who do this thing called mobile theatre. So they go to their village. Many of them go to Pathsala, rehearse perhaps in the month of June and July. And then the entire stage, artists, paraphernalia, stage boys, lights, chairs, seating arrangements, everything moves across the state to small villages, across the river, everywhere, and they make money. I think I actually took Arundhati Nag when she was here, and she was absolutely astonished to actually go visit this theatre where there are 2,000 people watching theatre and paying for it. So yes, it's a interesting, very interesting commercial idea of the theatre. Some people would argue that this theatre is really not serious theatre. It is, it's just a lot of masala and lots of formula and a lot of, hoo-ha. But then people love it. And it is a certain kind of theatre that keeps the theatrical experience alive in our state. Because people buy season tickets, they see all the plays that come. So that is something that probably is not there anywhere else in this country. And perhaps it's a unique phenomenon across the world. The amount of money people make, the stars that rise on the horizons doing mobile theatre. Many of our serious, quote-unquote, actors also sometimes go and do one season in the mobile theatre. Because you see, money is always a constraint. We have to understand that. The mobile theatre gives you the resources to go and make a good play later on. So it's perfectly okay if you can cater to the masses, make your money, and then go and do some serious stuff, which is fine, I guess. All right. So if there is any other question, thank you, Namrata, for this particular reminder, because I was going to skip over it. It's called Brahmaman Theatre in Assam. Mobile theatre. Ghumte rehte. So Vijay, I can wrap up this particular session. एक बात बोलनी थी. Again, thank you so much, Coconut Theatre, for this opportunity to meet up with people across the country to talk about what I absolutely love all the time, talk about the theatre. And thank you for according me the space to do that. I hope you've all enjoyed yourself. I hope it was not too academic, not too boring, not too many lists that you will forget again in an hour or so. I hope some of it stays with you. कल के लिए आई हैव बीन टोल्ड ओके कल आपके लिए एकदम बढ़िया एक और लाइव शो आपके लिए है इवेंट. सतीश आलेकर जी बोलेंगे, पद्मश्री श्री सतीश आलेकर जी, और संगीत नाटक एकेडमी अवार्ड विनर श्री अमोद भट्ट. कल संडे है, इसलिए कल 2 लाइव सेशंस होंगे. मेरे साथ आने के लिए, मुझे सुनने के लिए धन्यवाद. थैंक यू सो मच. Namaskar.